Dele sofika tao sabuni.
Alafu kwa nini?
Mama ni ongea lift kipo. Mama ni ongea lift kipo.
Sasa hizo basi tunaweza kukelanda kwa siku. Sasa hizo basi tunaweza kukelanda kwa siku.
Maje kuje tu blend kufanye. Maje kuje tu blend kufanye. Hawezi karibia.
Honorable Bosin, and come dressed like that.
The point of
still listened and still dreamt of a Kenya that would live up to its promise of being a great nation. That kind of faith is rare. Mr. Speaker, sir, to me, Right Honorable has been more than a political figure to its promise. He was a teacher of history, democracy, good governance, social justice in this country. He has always provided me with a shoulder to lean on and inspired in me resilience to overcome extremely challenging occasions. A mirror for courage, a role model for integrity and assurance that patriotism is not a slogan, it is a way of life. Mr. Speaker, sir, Honorable Raila, his journey has inspired us to keep pushing, to keep believing, and to never trade truth for convenience. Thank you, Honorable Raila, for showing us what leadership looks like when it is grounded in love for the people and country. Mr. Speaker, sir, the Right Honorable Raila, I call him Baba, showed great love to persons with disabilities whom he constantly nurtured politically, and help them climb to their highest political heights, both in Orange Democratic Movement Party and the Houses of Parliament. At a personal level, my family and I wish to record our most sincere appreciation for his assistance to me and my son at very difficult moments in our lives when we needed medical attention both inside and outside Kenya. After a fatal road accident involving me and my son in 2013, he mobilized and paid for the top neurosurgeons in the country to manage my son. Even when my nomination to the Senate was nullified, he stood by both morally and financially to date. This lasted for the period 2013 to the time of my current nomination to the National Assembly, which he wholeheartedly supported and facilitated, notwithstanding the fact that I came from a community that did not significantly support our party, ODM. Lastly, Mr. Speaker, sir, let me end by
Give him 30 seconds to end.
Let me end by quoting the last message by Honorable Raila Odinga to me last Sunday, 12th October 2025 at 9:13 a.m., where he wrote, "Thank you, my brother, for standing with the party in Baringo. I will always cherish this personal affection and recognition. Fare thee well, my friend, Right Honorable Baba." Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Thank you, member for Ghana.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It is a privilege. Father, to all of us and to the nation. When my friend Wafula Buke called me yesterday morning of the passing of Raila Odinga, I did not believe it. It looked like a normal joke, April Fool's Day. It looked like something that happened in Raila Odinga. It was very, a very courageous man. I admired the courage when I was young. What Raila has done for this country in very difficult times. We remember him for liberating this country when no one could dare speak to the government, up to the government. Raila Odinga did. And that's why we enjoy this peace that we have today democratically. I remember Raila's courage, Honorable Speaker. After election, we had maandamano. One day, one time, before we set out for the streets, Honorable Speaker, we were in a room with the other party leaders, now deciding which routes to use, Honorable Speaker. I remember one party leader said, "No, outside is bad. They are going to kill us." And it looked like all the other leaders were not ready to go that route. Raila Odinga told them, "You will find me there. Let me die if I have to die for this country." He was a courageous man. Honorable Speaker, Raila Odinga during campaigns came to campaign for me in Bumula constituency. And at that time, I was standing on DAP, my party DAP Kenya. There was an ODM candidate in my constituency. Raila Odinga instructed the Honorable Junet Mohammed to pull down the ODM candidate in my favor, Honorable Speaker. I know it has not been easy for Raila Odinga during campaigns came to campaign for me. Raila Odinga supported my campaign with 3.5 million. And at that time, I was standing. I am the chairman, my party DAP Kenya. There was an ODM candidate in my constituency. Raila Odinga instructed the Honorable Junet Mohammed to pull down the ODM candidate in my favor, Honorable Speaker. I know it has not been easy for Raila Odinga during campaigns came to campaign for me. Raila Odinga supported my campaign 3.5 million. And at that time, I was standing. I am the chairman, my party DAP Kenya. There was an ODM candidate in my constituency. Raila Odinga instructed the Honorable Junet Mohammed to pull down the ODM candidate in my favor, Honorable Speaker. I know it has not been easy. Chair. There was an ODM candidate. Raila Odinga instructed the Honorable Junet Mohammed to pull down the ODM candidate. I know it has not been easy. Chair.
Kama kuna movement isiyokuja, hii ni iliyopita sana.
Raila Odinga
Very committal, as they say, we will stay with Ruto in the end.
to pull down the
Just kukumbuka tu yako na sava na
Yeah,
Nimechoka na tabia zako na enda kwenu.
parade, where we'll also have the anthem again together.
Memories of Baba can only be a blessing to all of us if, especially those who are in executive, are going to work extremely hard to ensure that the ideals of Baba, and for instance, the public service,
asonge kidogo. Gari rahisi. Gari inasonga. Hapo sawa. Tripod.
Emomiyo wayuak kendo mokwongo agonu erokamano maduong' kuom luor to maumiyo jakom ang'eyo ni un kodwa nyaka giko wan bende wan kodu nyaka giko kendo watimo erokamano and I want to now translate in English for the media. I am more than on behalf of the family. I want to express my gratitude for coming here with us. We don't take this for granted because this thing has hit us. In English, it has hit us hard, and it has hit us right in the heart. And I'm sure the way I feel the family is the way you also feel. I want to express my gratitude. We all feel very grateful and it's happened abruptly. This was not expected. Did not expect this. It has hit us. It has hit us. And it's now hit hard. Now I want to request the way I have we all feel celebration. This was not expected. It has I want to request this was not expected. Wakwayo kama wakwayo ni jidudu wakwayo wanataka family watu I
na family. Na family. Na family. Na family.
Relax. So nataka tukubaliane tunaenda uwanja gani na tunaenda njia gani. Sawa? Ndawangojea ndio tukubaliane. Wapi? Nyayo. Kasarani. Sawa, sasa kama tunaenda Kasarani, ngoja tukubaliane vile tutaenda. Tuko na ndugu zetu wengi kwa town kuliko vile tulivyo. Tunaanzia hapa Chakaranda. Okay, sawa. Yote tutakubaliana wote pamoja. Lakini kitu ya maana ni pia baba apewe heshima yake. Si ndio? Kwa sababu unaona tunataka mama afike hapa na Winnie, kila mmoja ndio 20 moja. Unajua also wanasikia uchungu vile tunasikia. So nataka tukubaliane twende pamoja, tutoke nje. Ndio tupangie hapo nje. Si ndio? Kwa gate. Tukubaliane ni hivi ama vile. Sawa sawa? Tutaenda mbali tukikubaliana. Safari ni bado ni mbali. Ningependa tukubaliane wote. Safari ni mbali. Please. Sawa? Kitu ya maana pia mjue ni kwamba kuna process ya kupanga mwili ndio twende Jakaranda. Sawa? So twendeni wote. Twende.
Haya vijana oye! Vijana oye! Vijana TV! Vijana Tirana! Vijana TV! Sasa sasa unajua tunataka kuzika baba kama president, namna hiyo. Baba ndio kiongozi na baba ndio kila kitu, si namna hiyo. Sasa unajua Joturua Baba Nindo Joey watimu kama mondo wako wagwambo ginyasi waterura gwambo Kasarani mondo wadhi kode pap mondo wadhi wanene pap uye jomo hiyo fwana badge ya mokama wadi uru Kasarani Joey agwamo wanja lako ninda bade wadi uru jokama wadi uru agwamo wadigo joka nyanam pinyo Samoa wadi uru Omera wadi uru telne ura gwambo teluru ta gwambo luwe teluru ta gwambo luwa bangwa wadi uru jokama donge
Hi, this is Jen Psaki, and this is The Blueprint. So we had an event this weekend in New York City where I joined Rachel Maddow and Simone Sanders Townsend, Alicia Menendez and Lawrence O'Donnell, and many other MSNBC hosts you know well. And at that event, I interviewed the co-host of the podcast, I've Had It. You'll hear that a little bit later. But first, I want to share a conversation I had with Rachel Maddow at a dinner hosted by Luke Russert. So here's the Blueprint Live from MSNBC FanFest 25. We started the conversation with a question from Frank Paula of Chicago.
First of all, thank you both for the incredible work you've done and continue to do. You provide support and encouragement to everybody here and millions more, and you know that.
We're
Thanks.
both going to cry now.
Well, here goes. I had the privilege at last year's MSNBC convention dinner to ask you both how, given all the political noise that was going on at that time, how you determined what issue you would focus on any given news day. Well, over the last 9 months, the noise has changed. It's gotten louder and nearly unbearable. My question to both of you is, how, if at all, have you changed your approach in sorting through the sludge of a news cycle, and what considerations you take into account now to prioritize? What issues are worthy of political commentary?
That's a great question. It's great to see you again. I would say first, I'm the child of a therapist, so I am in a constant state of self-reflection, and it's a healthy thing to be, just like it's healthy to cry. And I have thought a lot about, and so I can just speak for myself, after the election last November, whether I was talking about and providing a platform for and shedding light on the right things. And I think there was too much time for me spent navel-gazing at how bad Trump was and talking about how bad Trump was and having people on who talked about how bad Trump was. I'm not saying that's their fault. It just became the totality of the discussion. And where I have really self-reflected is really thinking about people who are in the arena who are really doing something about it. So what are you doing about it? What are you doing to fight back on people who are disappearing people on the streets of our nation's cities, right? What are you doing about the fact that you feel frustrated that they're not extending healthcare subsidies to millions of Americans as they should? And so the prism for me is part that, and I've thought a lot about not allowing, even when politicians come on and say, well, Trump is terrible and he's a horror show, it's like, okay, well, you have a platform. What are you doing about it? What power do you have and what levers of power you can use? That's one. The other part, I've really gotten comfortable with my nerdy knowledge of how government functions, which I think is very important to understand and talk about right now. And what is normal? Thank you. We love all the nerds in this room. What is normal? What is not normal? The things that they are trying to do that don't seem important but are important, like firing inspectors general, like not allowing whistleblowers to post their complaints through websites, which is something they did this week. So I've gotten real comfortable in my nerdiness, and that took some self-reflection, but those are some of mine. But what about you?
I love the governance part of it too, because I do feel like we have devalued the idea of serving in Congress. We've devalued the idea of making legislation. We've devalued the idea of serving in government agencies, particularly Washington-based government agencies. Like I think as Americans, it's not just been a project of the right. I think a lot of us have allowed ourselves to let our respect for the mechanics of our democracy erode a little bit. And that's wrong, because our democracy actually is, for all its faults, it's what we've got, and it's the best system in the world, and it's fragile, and we have to stand up for it, and that means even standing up for Congress. I know, it's terrible. But sort of relearning governance, I think, right now, and what's not perfect about it, but why it's better to have it than not, is one of the things I've been learning from your show. And I've been trying to think in those lines. And actually, similarly, I've been trying to shift my gaze. I know what Trump wants to do, and I think I know a lot about how he wants to do it. I don't think there's much mystery there. With a translation app, you can just watch it happen in any of the other countries where this has happened in the last 100 years, right? The last century has been the story of democracies turning into authoritarian or falling to authoritarian movements and leaders. We know what they all want to do. So therefore, it's not news. What's news is what our country is going to do about it. What's news is how our country is going to respond. What's news is how our country is going to stand up for the democracy that we all say we don't want to lose. And so that's the story. Trump is the background, but the actual action is us. And that's how I try to focus every day.
All right, next we have a question from Jacob Lax from Raleigh, North Carolina. Jacob.
All right, thank you. So to both of you, Rachel, you often place current events in a longer historical arc, and Jen, your work focused on communicating policy as it unfolded in real time. So I'm curious how each of you thinks about time in your own work. The tension between helping people react to what's going on right now and helping them to understand how we got here.
I think of time as being a little bit interchangeable with place, in the sense that I think sometimes it's hard to recognize the situation that you are personally in at that moment. And so sometimes the reason that I will use a historical analogy is it is definitely something that we weren't all there for. So if I'm talking about something that happened in the 1800s, or I'm talking about something that happened in some other, previous multiple generations, you have to get outside yourself a little bit to see that, and then that can sometimes help us recognize the parallels for today, or recognize the model of heroism, or the particular threat, or some other analogy that I think is helpful. It's also sometimes true that it could be something that's contemporaneous, but it's happening in Poland, or it's happening in New Zealand, or it's happening in West Africa somewhere. It's just the way that my own brain works. I sometimes need to get outside myself to see it through different eyes. And either time or place or some other variable like that helps me do it.
Everybody's mind doesn't work the way Rachel Maddow's mind works. Does
Thank goodness.
Everybody know this? My mind does not work in the same way. And I often think much more about present day-ish, right? The last 20 to 30 years in politics and government, and what I've lived and experienced, and what moments tell us about what is normal, what is not normal. Sometimes it is, I've probably shown more clips of John Boehner, because this is the world we're living in now, and how people behave from other parties or in working together to reopen the government, or in response to a mass shooting or things like that, than I ever would have predicted.
And also, doing a show just weekly rather than doing a show every night, I have to think about time in terms of, am I talking to you about what's happened in the last week, or am I talking to you about what's happened in the last day, or am I talking to you about what might have happened since the last show started? That's something that you just have to juggle every night based on the imperatives of the moment, I think.
We have Madeline Bolden from Savannah, Georgia.
Good evening, Ms. Maddow and Ms. Saki.
Good
evening. We can be on a first-name basis, Madeline. I hope.
Empathy is being attacked in today's society. Do you think empathy can survive in journalism without being seen as a weakness?
I love this question. Before I was at MSNBC, I worked with journalists, of course, in communications and media for 20 years. And what I found were some of the best journalists had tremendous empathy for humans and people and what they were experiencing and events in the world. And when I was at the State Department for a couple of years, and the reporters and journalists there, hard-hitting, tough, really smart, they covered those issues because they cared about global movements, and they cared about peace deals, and they cared about negotiations, and they cared about ending wars. And that's what made them great journalists. So I would say, I think empathy is a strength. Empathy is a superpower. Empathy allows you to connect and really digest things in a way that is different from robotically repeating things on television. That's not what any of us do. So that's how I see it. But you're going to say something wiser than me, and I'm here for it. Let's hear it.
Just to underscore what you said, I think that you can't tell a good story without empathy, because otherwise, I don't have a parent who's a therapist, and so maybe people hearing stories about themselves is a helpful thing in therapy. I don't know. But otherwise, every story by definition is asking you to leave your own mind and your own experience and imagine or embody somebody else's. Mm-hmm. And storytelling, I agree with Ken Burns on this, the great documentarian. Stories are what changes the world, and stories are indeed what explains the world. And there is not a story, again, outside of potentially a therapeutic context, that's about you. It's always about imagining or seeing something else. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's the core of what it is, not only to be human and have love in your life and have moral relationships with people who you care for. I think it's the absolute core of what we do. in terms of talking about the world. But thank you for the question. It's
Yeah,
beautifully phrased, too, as well. Thank you.
All righty. We have here Mary Jean White from Aston, Pennsylvania.
Hi, Mary Jean. Hello.
Hi, Mary Jean.
Delco. So for both of you, what do you see as the biggest challenge in helping the public understand accountability and how it works, how oversight works, and how important your role is and our role is? You mentioned earlier about the IG websites going down, right? So the fourth estate, you all are all we have left. How do you translate that to folks to have them understand how important it is to understand what oversight is and how it is important that we have it and how we don't have it now? How can we make that real for people when they're sitting in their kitchen and talking to each other after they turn off your show or before they go to bed? So how do you do that every day?
I have a small point, but I'm interested in your take on this. I mean, I would say I think that whether or not you are conservative or liberal or engaged or apathetic, I think the idea that it's better to know than to not know is a pretty human thing. That even if we enjoy escapism, even if a lot of us turned off the news once the news started going in a direction we didn't like, in general, I think it's better to know than to not know. And one of the great assists that we've got from this administration in particular on convincing people that it's better to know than to not know, that you'd better pay attention, you better have some way to find out what's happening rather than leaving them to their own devices, is that they keep robbing all of us blind. Donald Trump making billions of dollars in less than a year since he's been back in office is something that means something to people because they know they're having their pockets picked. And so is it better for us to know that that's happening or just to close our eyes and pretend it's not? And I think there is something instinctual in not just the American people, but in people generally to know that you'd rather not be blindsided. And I think people know instinctively that there is something, there's a lot going on that is self-dealing. And I think people are reflexively repulsed by that and want to know about it. And so that's a good way to talk about, well, how will we know about it? There's no inspectors general. The FBI is instead chasing all the president's political enemies. It's the free press, right? That's how we're going to know. And that's a pretty straightforward argument, I think, particularly in an era of really blatant self-dealing and corruption.
I will tell you the thing that worries me is the things that we don't know, right? And that it's hard to know. The Inspector General's is an example because it's like, what would they be investigating right now? We don't know. It's kind of an unknowable. The FBI, it's not just Kash Patel's hawking of weird goods and doing what he's doing. It's also the firing of very qualified FBI officials across the country. What threats are they not looking after? What threats are they not following? And I will say, like, a personal one that I'm concerned about, and then I will get to a positive point because I think that's the point here, but is the press briefing room, which may sound like a small thing. It is a big thing because and what I worry about is it's very hard to understand what's happening in there unless you've lived in that room and been the press secretary or a staffer or a reporter. And there are still some very excellent reporters, hard-hitting, tough, smart reporters in there. But slowly but surely, they're reshaping the people who get questions and the people who fill that room into people who are sycophants for the administration. And if you look at the press briefing, and I do more than most people probably because we do a little shtick on our show about it, you see that, you know, some days it's maybe a third of the questions, some days it's half, sometimes it's 15%. And they're questions like, and this is literally one once, President Trump looks like he's in such good shape. I want to know what his health regimen is, right? So, and you know, that's funny, but there's also some that are serious, right? And I'm concerned about that because that shapes the public's perception of what the media is. Most people don't know how to differentiate Benny Johnson from other people in the room. Okay, so those are my concerns. What I think is a powerful thing is the most powerful tool of information is all of you and individuals and people. People trust their neighbors. They trust people in their community. They trust people they know more than they trust any of the institutions. I mean, government, media, anyone. So what I think about a lot is how can we provide a couple of pieces of information that are digestible and warning signs so that you can end the show and be like, you know what's weird? There's 8 reporters in that briefing room who got questions who are propagandists, right? That's something that should concern anyone. But I think part of it is people needing to feel empowered themselves to share the story of what's happening right now, take the information they have and pass it along, which is happening. And that is a plus of social media platforms, I would say, that have many negatives, but that's a plus of them.
All right.
Luke, do one more. I know we're supposed to be done. Can we just do one more?
Rachel
I'm
wants
sorry.
to do one more. Then you can pick someone from the crowd, Rachel.
Oh, yeah.
Go ahead. Okay.
You're
right up here close. Here, use my microphone. Sorry, that was me.
Hi, thank you so much. I'm here from Florida, and I would just like to thank you for showing all of the film clips you have showed from across the nation in tiny little red places to show us that we are not alone. And that has made such a difference. And I think one of the things we all need to do right now is be in community. And that is helping so much. So thank you.
What's your name?
Barbara.
Barbara, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. I will, let's just finish with that. That being in community thing is for real. And what you just said about social media and sharing things that are things that you understand, that you think other people should understand, that's for real. But there is something about being in a physical place with other people where you can look them in the eyes. Mm-hmm. And that's why I said make sure you meet somebody here tonight who you didn't know before you got here. There is something about in real life communication, eyeball to eyeball, talking with people about how you are feeling and what you guys might be able to do together, what you might be able to share the burden of in terms of what you think needs to happen in the country. And if you haven't, I don't care what you join, but if you haven't joined something since we've entered into an authoritarian era in American politics, this is a time to join something. And again, it can be a Zumba class, it's fine. It can be anything where you're meeting in real life, offline, with other human beings with whom you can make common cause or at least share your humanity. Part of the way an authoritarian works is that they stop us from seeing one another in any way that yields to solidarity. They keep us afraid of each other. They keep us angry at each other. They keep us atomized and depressed and not wanting to participate in things in our civic life because civic life seems alien or dangerous. One of the things we can all do, no matter what your interests are, no matter what your skills are, is join something so that you are seeing people in real life. And I would just encourage you to find that community where you can. Take inspiration from the fact that they really don't want us to do it. Thank you guys. Thank you guys so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Rachel and Jen, thank you so much.
All right. Hi, everyone. Okay. You guys sit right there. All right. Okay. Yay! We're so excited to be here and doing this with all of you guys. Have a seat. Now, if you have not heard of the I've Had It podcast, and I suspect most of you have, it is a part of my soul connection to all of the things that are happening in our world and how we need to respond to them. It is a part of my weekly routine. I listen to it on the way home from work. I'm so thrilled to have you both here. And we're going to talk about all the things in a totally unfiltered way, as everybody would expect, right? So let's do it.
Thank you for having us.
Okay. Okay. So for those of you who aren't familiar with these amazing ladies, I'm going to give you we'll do a little introduction so you know a little bit about them. So let me just start. You guys have had your podcast for a while. It didn't start as a political podcast. We looked up what the topic of the first podcast episode was. Do you remember what it was?
Yeah.
So the topic was toddlers are assholes. That was the topic of their first episode. And I will say my kids are 7 and 10, so they're kind of out of the toddlers are assholes stage, although toddlers can be assholes, so I can confirm that. But you've kind of evolved over time. It's become more political. It's very direct. How did that evolution happen? Why did it happen?
Well, I've always been a diehard political junkie, and she started getting more and more political during Trump 1.0. And I can't help but talk about politics, and I can't help but speak up when I see injustice or racism or sexism or homophobia. And so Trump, even when Biden was president, Trump was so omnipresent, you couldn't help but get irritated, pissed off, and want to just, talk shit about it. And so that's what we do, because it's the only way that you can look at somebody and say, am I crazy? Or are these people crazy? Because I need to know what's going on here. So we started talking about it. And originally, a lot of people it was Heartbreak Hotel, 2 white women from Oklahoma City that were liberal. I mean, it's
not an easy way to live.
These people were so mad when they found out we weren't MAGA. And that made us want to triple down, quadruple down. And we shed all the MAGA support, and then we got the people who really love social justice, equality, democracy, and we built a community, and we just like to talk shit.
We love it. Okay. One of the most interesting things, you're both from Oklahoma, or you both have lived in Oklahoma. You just moved here, though.
I did.
Welcome to New York, right? This is a great addition to the New York community. So, Angie, you come from a religious background. You grew up in a religious family. You talk about this a lot on the show. It's interesting because I think it helps listeners understand a different perspective and a different way people perceive things, which is really important in this moment. So how has that shaped how you talk about politics or how you see events happening in the world right now?
Well, I was raised super evangelical Christian, and what I think people don't realize is how religiosity is baked into every single thing in middle America, particularly rural America, because they have church and they have their communities, and it's the same white people they've seen their whole lives. So for me, there was a turning point in my life where I was like, all the things I'd been sold with my religion, I'm special. Nothing bad can happen to me because I'm doing everything right and I'm better and I have this entitlement that makes me able to judge other people. So I had an awakening and kind of had to deconstruct all of that to realize that the faith I was brought up in was in fact not empathetic. It was not what I was taught, that, be nice to everybody. It was very judgmental and entitled. So many people have reached out and said we had that same upbringing, that their religion was not empathetic. It was mean and hateful and judgmental. And so I just want to be a person that was inside of that, but now is able to say, that's wrong. And I know why you're thinking that, and it's not okay.
Very well said. You do this amazing thing on your show that everybody who listens and watches knows, where you talk about what you've had it with, hence the name of the show. So I thought we could do a little round. It's your thing, but it's helpful for everybody. It's a form of therapy, I will say, I think. So let me start by saying what I've had it with.
Yeah.
I have had it with little Mike Johnson, who I will forever call him, and less little John Thune. He's much taller, so he's less little bigger. Pretending they are powerless in this moment, even though they are the Speaker of the House, the second in line to the presidency, and the Republican leader of the Senate, pretending they are powerless in this moment to end the shutdown, to make sure people have health care subsidies, to ensure earlier than today that military would be paid, and to do all the things that they have the power to do, but they behave like they're observers of everything happening in the world, even when they've created it. What have you had it with?
There's so many things. I am a lawyer, but I didn't do like smart people law. I did divorce law. So, but I've had it with the Supreme Court because I revere, yeah.
A lot of people have had it with the Supreme Court here. There's a contingent. I don't know if these are lawyers, but there's a standing ovation to this I've had it happening in the back, which kind of tells you something. This is a good I've had it.
Well, it's because as a lawyer, I learned to revere them. They were above ethics. They were above personal decisions, conflict of interest. And I realize now they're the most radicalized, shilling for fascism. And everything I learned in law school was a lie. So I feel very betrayed by them. And I feel like they're complicit in what's going on.
Yeah, that's such a good point. I mean, I've been talking to my kids about things like the 3 branches of government and the traditions of them. I actually taught one of my daughter's Girl Scout troops for a democracy badge, and you're explaining the 3 different parts of government, and you're thinking, there's a modern version of this, but I'm not going to educate the 4th graders on it quite yet. Give me a few years. Okay. I know there's a lot. I mean, part of the thing that's so wonderful about this event and was wonderful last year is that it's a community of people. Sometimes you're meeting people for the first time. Sometimes you saw them last year. Sometimes you're meeting somebody you're sitting with. And this is a safe place for stressing, griping, worrying, talking about the things that concern you. But I'm a believer we also need to have kind of moments of light in this moment and things that inspire us, or not even inspire, and we'll talk about that later, but things that are good. So let's call out some good things. We will get to some griping, because griping is a safe and happy thing to do in therapy sessions. So I'm going to start with a thing that I think the Democrats in Congress are doing well right now. I think this fight that they have picked over the extension of healthcare subsidies is the best fight that they have done and led and run the most effectively since Trump was elected. And I say that as someone who's very critical of what they did in the spring. Okay, I know, because I am a listener, I know how you both feel about the Democratic leaders in the House and Senate, and we will have time to talk about that. Is there one thing they're doing right now that you think is good?
I have been so incredibly impressed with Robert Garcia.
Oh,
he
that's a good
has
one.
done such a good job in the leadership position that he has. He has been relentless about the Epstein files. Even though I'm not convinced we'll ever actually get them, but he will not let it die, and I really appreciate that. He, in the minority, he has done a great job.
This is a really good one.
It's a really good one.
Yeah, it's a very good one. Also because for a long time, it was this theory that it didn't matter who were the ranking members on committees. And it really matters who the ranking members are on committees. Because Robert Garcia is not even the chairman of the committee. He's the ranking member. He's tireless. And he is pushing like heck to get things done. Okay.
Do you want me to say something positive?
We can just a little, like a little flavor of something, something positive.
We had Chris Murphy, and I think he's excellent. And we had an Oklahoma City native, Senator Elizabeth Warren, who's one of my favorites. And they are, when you're speaking to politicians that aren't beholden to corporations, you can tell, because you can just ask them questions and they answer it very clearly. And both of them recently, you can just tell they're speaking our language. They understand the fight they're up against. So I really enjoy them.
Those are very good examples. I think one of the conversations I had, the other episode of my new podcast is with Greg Kazar, and he is a very impressive young, up-and-coming rising star. And one of the things we were talking about was the fact that there sometimes is a inaccurate description of what the dividing lines are. To me, and you reminded me of this, it is about people who are anti-corporation, anti-corruption, and those who are not afraid to call it out. And that is, it doesn't have to be progressive or moderate, it can be all of those things. It's people who are willing to do that. And those are some of the people who are willing to do that. And they are very good examples.
Yeah. Definitely. I think that when we have like a corporate style Democrat on the podcast, I'm like, we're at the stage in this authoritarian takeover. We're not at the beginning of it. We're in the middle of it. So if we ask you a question, just answer it. I mean, look at all the shit that Trump gets away with all day, every day. Quit with the controlled Democratic messaging. Let it rip. Let's just go. I mean, buckle up and fight this thing. And when you have those voices on that aren't beholden and you ask them a yes or no question, you just get that answer. And it's just so refreshing. And it's that very vacuum that the Democrats have not filled that caused Trump to rise up.
Let's talk about male fragility, because that's fun to talk about. First of all,
if any male in here is not fragile, because you're here, and you're supporting all of the important causes and rights and things that you all stand for in a community. Male fragility is a fun thing to make fun of in the, the notion that if you are liberal, you are weak, you are woke, whatever that all means. It's not true. We need some of those men, I think, who have fallen into that male fragility and are making these accusations to come back and support Democratic candidates. How do we do that?
I keep thinking that because Trump whines like he's a victim all the time. Everybody's mean to me. Nobody does what I say. That at some point, these alpha men will be like, I'm tired of listening to this grown man that inherited $1 gazillion. They're going to get sick of it. But I have failed to see that. But what I have seen of late, and I'm speaking very late, are these bro podcasters in the manosphere. It is starting to break because people are starting to see how they treat immigrants, the First Amendment issues. So I'm hopeful that that will be a fissure. And at the end of the day, it's money. These people are motivated by money.
Like meaning, or tell me this is what you mean, like Theo Vaughn or Joe Rogan kind of being critical of some things that the Trump administration is doing.
It's not straight down the line. He's a big alpha man and we're alpha men. They're kind of starting to see the cracks.
One of the things that I love about your podcast is that you, as you can all tell, say it straight and just hold back nothing. And you talk about your own personal lives and backgrounds too a lot to help people understand. I think a lot of people in this room are thinking ahead to holidays, Thanksgiving, Christmas. Perhaps you're going to have to sit at a table, be at a holiday party with people who, maybe MAGA people who are from places like Oklahoma. What do they do? What's your advice for people in this room who are going to go and have to engage with people who they viscerally disagree with on lots of issues?
Well, originally it was news, weather, sports, because my parents, like Jesse Waters, is like, here's Jesus and here's Jesse Waters. And it grosses me out so bad. And so I used to just news, weather, sports it with them. And now I just keep saying to my mother specifically, that makes me so sad for you. That makes me so sad you can't have empathy for poor people. It makes me so sad you don't have empathy for people that are being ripped away from their families. And she sputters and she doesn't respond, but she can't defend it. I even asked her, what would Jesus do? And she said, oh, he'd be all for this. And I'm like, that's a lie.
All right. Well, there you go, everyone. Thank you to these fabulous ladies of the Have I Had It podcast. You can find it anywhere where you get podcasts. Thank you all so much. Thank you, Anne. Thank you. Really appreciate it.
Really happy to have you here. I got to tell you right off the bat, you get 2 Rachel Maddow shows this week here on MSNBC. I'm here tonight. And then I will also be here again this week on Friday night at 8 p.m. Eastern. I can explain. I will have more on that in just a second. Bear with me, but you're stuck with me for 2 weeknights this week. First, though, here's a weird thing that happened today. You ready? After President Trump gave his speech at the Israeli parliament today, he then, you might have seen, he went to Egypt to go sign things. We don't exactly know what the things were that he signed, but they purported to be related to the Israeli-Hamas ceasefire deal, the release of Israeli hostages today, the release of prisoners held by Israel. So he was there signing something in Egypt. And when he turned to speak at that event in Egypt, he said something
that I think even in the room struck people as a little bit strange. Now, that is not an unusual occurrence for this president. He is a meandering speaker. He often says stuff that seems out of context or inappropriate for the audience to which he is speaking. But in Egypt, in the midst of this big news day, it was weird. He turned and he said to the strongman leader of Egypt, who took power in a military coup, a guy who Trump in his first term called his favorite dictator, Trump turned to the microphone today in Egypt and he said this. He said, "There was a reason we chose Egypt, because you were very helpful. Everybody wanted to have this. You are a great leader. You have very little crime." And then he said, quote, "I want to thank you. He's been my friend right from the beginning during the campaign against crooked Hillary Clinton. Have you heard of her?" He's gesturing to the president of Egypt and saying, "He's been my friend from the beginning during the campaign against crooked Hillary Clinton." Why is he talking about Hillary Clinton today? Today. In the midst of everything else. Why is he talking about Hillary Clinton in Egypt? How in the heck does Hillary Clinton have anything to do with him being in Egypt, with his relationship with the president of Egypt? Yeah, it turns out, funny story. In Donald Trump's 2016 run for president against Hillary Clinton, one of the unexplained twists in that campaign was that Trump picked a foreign leader to call his favorite dictator during the campaign, which is not a typical thing that an American presidential candidate might do. You might think that the American people might not like that, but Trump went out on a limb and did that anyway. Before he was elected, during the campaign, he singled out the military strongman leader of Egypt as his favorite dictator. He actually showered him with all sorts of inexplicable praise. And I mean, it was inexplicable because, I mean, this is not something for which there's like a big domestic audience during a presidential campaign. Why do you want to vote for somebody for president who's praising who his favorite dictator is and why he likes this military strongman abroad? It was so weird. But he was really sort of insistent about it just a few weeks before Election Day, as Donald Trump's campaign was running out of money. And it really looked like he was going to lose to Hillary Clinton. Donald Trump, at the height of the 2016 presidential campaign, he took a one-on-one meeting with the president of Egypt. And he came out of that meeting and he called the president of Egypt a, quote, fantastic guy. He promised him that if he, Donald Trump, was elected president, the United States would be a, quote, loyal friend to Egypt. And then when Trump, in fact, was elected, he very much made good on that. He brought the president of Egypt to be one of his first guests at the White House. Egypt, really? He showered him with totally unqualified praise. What's that about? Then he gave Egypt nearly $200 million that his own Trump-appointed State Department leadership opposed him giving. Then he gave them more than $1 billion after that. He just loved the president of Egypt. Couldn't do enough for the president of Egypt. Couldn't say why he loved him so much, but he just kept pouring it on. What was that about?
I want to thank you. Another one. He's been my friend right from the beginning during the campaign against crooked Hillary Clinton.
That was today. He's been my friend right from the beginning during the campaign against crooked Hillary Clinton. I want to thank you. Something about his love for Egypt's president goes back to his campaign against Hillary Clinton in 2016. What could that be? Oh, right. Last year, there was landmark reporting from the Washington Post, including our own Carol Leonnig, about one of the Justice Department investigations into Donald Trump that was shut down by his appointees once he became president. This was the headline, quote, $10 million cash withdrawal drove secret probe into whether Trump took money from Egypt. Now, when this story was published by the Washington Post, Trump's campaign, of course, called it fake news. But here's what that reporting said. During his campaign in 2016 against Hillary Clinton, the Trump campaign really had run out of money. His advisors were begging him to put in more of his own money into the campaign, and he was reportedly saying, no, 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 he couldn't do it, or at least he wouldn't do it. But then he met with the president of Egypt, this inexplicable meeting he took at the height of the campaign with the president of Egypt. And somehow, shortly thereafter, he changed his mind about how much money he could give to his campaign. Yes, suddenly he could give $10 million of his own money to his campaign in the last crucial weeks before the election. He had somehow come up with $10 million that he felt he could afford to give his campaign. Interestingly, at the time, it was little noticed, but he said he would give that $10 million as a loan, not as a donation, so that meant he would expect to be paid back that $10 million. Donald Trump, at the very last minute, supercharges his 2016 campaign with a $10 million loan right at the end. He then does win the election. Does Donald Trump ever get that $10 million back? That $10 million that he may or may not have been good for? I don't know. But the Justice Department reportedly found that 5 days before he was inaugurated, mysteriously, an organization linked to the Egyptian intelligence service withdrew almost exactly $10 million in cash from the National Bank of Egypt. They stuffed bundles of $100 bills into two huge bags that weighed a combined 200 pounds. It was nearly all the US dollar cash reserves that the Egyptian government had. 200 pounds of cash, $10 million cash, loaded into bags and taken out of the National Bank of Egypt. And poof, nobody knows where that money went. Now, for seasoned investigators, like you'll find in the upper echelons of the U.S. Justice Department, it is theoretically possible to find where money like that might have gone. But under Bill Barr, the Trump Justice Department shut down that investigation, so the relevant bank accounts were never looked at. What potentially could have been a gigantic bribe to Donald Trump to aid his 2016 campaign was never traced. And so no one knows to this day officially why exactly Trump, all these years later, is still thanking the strongman leader of Egypt for something he did to help Trump in his 2016 campaign against Hillary Clinton.
I want to thank you. Another one. We've been my friends right from the beginning during the campaign against crooked Hillary Clinton.
Still thanking him all these years later. Front of mind whenever he sees the president of Egypt all these years later. Today at that same event in Egypt, President Trump was caught on a hot mic talking to the president of Indonesia, saying something about how he was going to set up a meeting for the president of Indonesia with Eric Trump, his son, the blonde one, who manages the Trump family business. Eric Trump has no job in the U.S. government. There is no reason why an American president should be arranging meetings for one of his family members with the head of state of another country, particularly when he's at an international meeting on official presidential business. That said, that appeared to be what he did today in this hot mic moment at this event. Why Eric Trump? I don't know. But hey, look, just last week, Eric Trump was promoting the Trump family's brand new golf course deal in Indonesia, calling it a stunning golf destination. And now the president, in his official capacity, presumably, is hooking up his son, who is running the family business, with the president of Indonesia, the country that is hosting this new Trump family boondoggle in that country. And that is not to be confused with the Trump family boondoggle in Qatar, where the Trump family has a new golf course and tower and luxury apartments or something or other. The nation of Qatar, Trump in his first term said they were a funder of terrorism at a very high level. But then Qatar did this deal for this new Trump luxury development in their country. And then Qatar gifted Trump a $400 million luxury jet, which he plans to refit at taxpayer expense for his own use as president, and then not give to the next president. He plans to then keep it for his presidential library after he leaves office. And now Trump has announced that if Qatar is attacked, the United States will respond as if we have been attacked, which means he's basically given them fake NATO membership on his own say-so. And then this.
I'm also proud that today we're announcing, we're signing a letter of acceptance to build a Qatari Emiri Air Force facility at the Mountain Home Air Base in Idaho. The location will be host a contingent of Qatari F-15s.
The response to that announcement from Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth was roughly, say what now? We're doing what in Idaho? Who has an Air Force base in Idaho now? Whereupon the former Fox and Friends weekend co-host, now Trump Defense Secretary, had to issue what he called a, quote, important clarification. It's just them getting to use our Air Force base in Idaho. We're not giving them their own in Idaho. Did it sound like that when I said it like that? That's so not what I meant, you guys. Important clarification. But Trump is keeping Qatar's plane, and the Trump family is building their big golf and tower thingy in Qatar, and presumably whatever else they want, because that's the way the presidency works now under Donald Trump. You put money in his pocket, you give money to his family, and he hooks you up with basically whatever you want out of the pockets of the American people. From the American Treasury, literally from the U.S. Treasury. I mean, while the U.S. government is shut down right now, it's one thing to have the president leaving the country and flying to other countries, as Trump did today. It's another thing to have the U.S. government funding another country's government while we are not funding ours. Nevertheless, Trump's Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, just sent $20 billion, just sent 20 billion U.S. taxpayer dollars to go fund the government of Argentina, to go bail out their currency for some reason. Argentina's currency has dropped 27% in value already this year, but we're buying $20 billion worth of it. Why is that? That doesn't seem like a good bet. Don't worry, it's just a loan. Right, think we're going to get that loan back? I don't know. The IMF has had to bail out Argentina 23 different times. Argentina owes the IMF more money than any other country on earth. The most recent IMF bailout was just in April, and even that wasn't enough to keep their economy and their peso from continuing to tank. But apparently now it's us. Scott Bessent, Trump's Treasury Secretary, nevertheless just gave Argentina $20 billion of your money to prop up the government of Argentina, even though we have almost no trade with them, and if their economy or their currency collapses, that would be sad for them, but it would likely have no effect on us. This is not something we're doing to protect ourselves. It is just a favor to them. Trump and Scott Bessent have given them $20 billion out of the U.S. Treasury, a $20 billion bailout that already appears, quite possibly, to be lost down a deep, dark well, because even after Trump gave them this $20 billion infusion within the last few days, CNBC reports today that markets today reacted in such a way that indicates that $20 billion might not be enough. Argentina might tank anyway. And that presumably best case means that we'll never get our $20 billion back. Worst case, it means they're going to keep giving them even more money that we'll never get back. Why, when our own government is shut down, are we giving another country $20 billion to keep their government going? When, again, we have no links to their economy, their risk has no connection to risk in our country. Why are we doing that? I don't know. But there are at least 2 American billionaires who are very close to Trump Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. And these billionaires have made big bets on the health of Argentina's economy. So, I don't know if you had any plans for that $20 billion. It's your money. But for these rich guy friends of Scott Bessent, including Scott Bessent's former mentor on Wall Street, they stand to make a lot of money if the U.S. taxpayer starts propping up that failing country. And they stand to lose a lot if we don't, and that country fails. So there goes $20 billion of your money to buy nearly worthless pesos in Buenos Aires, while, Yellowstone shuts down and people who work for the TSA don't get paid, and American hospitals are white-knuckling it through day 12 of a government shutdown with no end in sight. The news right now, what's going on right now, this is why every opposition movement to every authoritarian government everywhere on earth focuses on the corruption and the self-dealing and the self-enrichment of the supposed strongman leader and inevitably his family and his ne'er-do-well sons-in-law and his cronies, right? What happens when you lose the rule of law? What happens when you lose a professional government? What happens when the democratic right to replace your leaders is taken away from you? What happens is that the strongman and his family and his sons-in-law and his cronies, they all make sure that they get very rich. They use the government of the country to get themselves very, very rich. And they think they don't ever have to answer to anyone ever. And so they do it shamelessly. They get everything for themselves, while for everybody else, for regular people, everything crumbles. They steal everything for themselves. And for everyone else, it turns into just, make do, economic insult, and the hollowing out of anybody else having any meaningful chance at anything. And if you don't like it, the one thing they'll be very good at serving up is repression. I mean, in a country that is losing its democracy, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? Complain? Yes, actually. Yes, it turns out the American people, at least, are going to complain about it, particularly about the masked secret police force brutalizing people in the streets part of it, which we are experiencing right now. The American people are going to complain about that in every way they know how, including while they are dressed in inflatable Tyrannosaurus Rex costumes, and when they are dressed up as frogs and unicorns and axolotls and bananas, so many bananas, and peacocks and pandas and raccoons and spacemen and lobsters and sharks. We will protest and mock you while dressed up as mushrooms and Pokemons and SpongeBob SquarePants, and while dressed up as Bob Ross, as Bob Ross the painter, wearing a Bob Ross wig, painting the ongoing protests around us. Protesters in Portland this weekend blew bubbles at ICE agents and hula hooped at them. They formed a flash mob to do a coordinated dance performance of the cha-cha slide. They held formal afternoon tea services. They went, quote, ice fishing. They tied donuts to poles and pretended to lure federal agents with those delicious sugary pastries. This form of absurdist resistance and protest and mockery in Portland started with a guy in a chicken suit showing up at the ICE headquarters every day, and one guy in an inflatable frog costume showing up at the protest every day and not backing off even when the masked Trump goons pepper sprayed the inflatable frog. In Portland, Oregon, they have been laughing at the fact that Trump was trying to justify sending in the troops by saying this was a war-ravaged city, by showing in every way they know how that Portland is just as wonderful and weird as it's always been. By this weekend, what local Portland residents were calling Operation Inflation, they had dozens of people out dancing and protesting in inflatable chicken suits and dino suits and mushroom suits, and the yips, the guys from everything, right? They had a brass band out among the protesters, most of whom were wearing banana suits themselves. At least some members of the Banana Block brass band were pepper sprayed by federal agents because, God forbid, there be a band. At least one member of the band was arrested while committing the crime of playing the clarinet. And because Portland is Portland, where every year they hold a naked bike ride, Because A, why not? And B, to show the vulnerability of cyclists. So drivers take care to not hurt cyclists on the road. That is the basic idea of the weird and wonderful annual Portland Naked Bike Ride. This weekend, they did an extra one. They held what they called an emergency naked bike ride, an extra one this year. Oregon Live reports that at the start of it at the Oregon Convention Center, where it was 53 degrees, there were about 1,000 people turned out for the emergency naked bike ride. By the time people got to the Portland Ice Facility, there were several thousand people on bikes in various states of undress, protesting against Trump and ICE and him wanting to send troops into that city. Have you ever loved Portland more than you do in this moment? People turned out in big numbers in Williston, Vermont this weekend, where they are trying to expand the ICE facility there, and locals say they are having none of it. In Memphis, Tennessee this weekend, U.S. military veterans set up an encampment at City Hall to protest Trump sending troops to that city. In Columbia, Missouri, this weekend, people from the excellent local music scene came out to protest and essentially play a live protest show at City Hall after ICE came in and took the guy who does security at the Blue Note and the Rose Music Hall, those legendary music venues in Columbia, Missouri. In Chicago, we're going to speak tonight with the Reverend David Black, who has been part of protests in that city and has been pepper sprayed and shot in the head with pepper balls while he was in the act of praying. Today, Chicago community leaders led a protest at the ICE facility in Broadview. Democratic Congressman Raja Krishnamurti asked to be let into that facility, to see that facility. As a member of Congress, they're supposed to let him do that under federal law, but today they would not let him inside. We're going to talk tonight about the remarkable, very moving Catholic Eucharistic procession that happened at that ICE facility yesterday with Catholic priests and nuns, more than 1,000 Catholics supporting that procession as the priests were turned away from that facility as well. We're going to be speaking with Pastor David Black again here in just a moment. We're also tonight going to speak with one of the founders of Indivisible about what are expected to be absolutely massive No Kings protests this weekend. This is happening this Saturday, October 18th, all over the country. These protests this Saturday, as I said, they're going to happen everywhere in more than 2,000 locations. If passed as prologue, this is on track to be one of the largest protests in American history this Saturday. So we've got all that coming up this hour. A lot to get to this hour. One last thing, though. Let me just take one point of personal privilege here before we get to those stories and to our guests tonight. I mentioned right at the top of the show that there are going to be 2 Rachel Maddow shows this week. I'm here tonight, right now, like you're used to seeing me on Monday nights. But I'm also going to be here on Friday, doing another show Friday at 8 p.m. That is because Friday at 9 p.m., this is the night before the big No Kings protests, Friday at 9 p.m., I've got a new documentary that we are premiering here on MSNBC. So that is why I'm going to be here Friday. I'll have a special Rachel Maddow show, 8 o'clock. We're going to show that doc at 9 p.m. As you might know, I changed my schedule here at MSNBC over the last couple of years. I'm generally here just one night a week now instead of being here every night. The reason I made that change, in part, is because I want to spend my working hours working on a lot of different stuff right now beyond the nightly TV show that I was doing before. So that includes this new documentary that I'm going to show on Friday. That includes books that I've done, podcasts. Tonight in Manhattan, the Edward R. Murrow Awards are being given out. It's a big, important journalism award. I am not there at the awards tonight, accepting one of those awards. I'm not there because I am here live with you. But tonight, my podcast, Ultra, is getting an Edward R. Murrow Award, which I have to say I'm really proud of. I don't generally believe in awards and things, but this is a big deal. If you haven't listened yet to Ultra Season 2, I hope you will. I think it's helpful for where we are in this moment. I think it's one of the best things I've ever done creatively. But that podcast, Ultra, which is winning that award tonight, also the next podcast that I've got coming out before the end of this year, which I haven't told you about yet, and this documentary that I've got coming out on Friday They're all a part of the same thing to me. They're all part of what I consider sort of to be my work right now in this moment, which is that these are all different stories, different lessons about how to fight really hard fights in America, how to fight the government when the government is doing terrible things, how to fight authoritarian movements in this country. This has been sort of a series for me. Ultra, my book Prequel, the next podcast that I've got coming out, and this documentary that I've got coming out on Friday. It's all about how hard it is to fight those fights and how noble it is and how worthwhile it is. And specifically with this new documentary, it's about the real, unglamorous, very difficult work it takes behind the scenes to be part of a big movement like that wins. So again, the film is going to air Friday night here on MSNBC. I will be back here Friday, 8 p.m. Eastern. In the meantime, I just want to show you this. This is the trailer. Watch.
It didn't look like a promising job.
Now I will call for Andrew Young, that dedicated leader.
Nobody really wanted to go work for Martin Luther King. He had been stabbed, bombed, jailed, and he didn't have any money.
The Southern Christian Leadership Conference spearheading the passive resistance movement.
Martin Luther King was looking for an assistant to do all the dirty work. When there was something that needed to be done and nobody wanted to do it, that was my job.
We will use the dogs if they start drawing knives again. We will use the holes.
We don't intend to quit this fight until we get our situation resolved.
My assignment was to find somebody to negotiate with. They were looking for a fight.
We say to all the Jews and next, they'll get burned before it's over with.
Somebody came up behind me and hit me.
I remember somebody kicking me in my stomach, and I felt around looking for a sore place, and there wasn't any there.
We were soldiers. Soldiers without violence, without hatred.
This is a revolution that won't fire a shot.
I was expected to oversee all of the things that were going on.
We are marching for you.
A shot rang out. He fell. When I saw him, there was no hope. The last thing we agreed on was that we had to take the movement into politics.
Congressman Andrew Young.
Andrew Young has emerged.
Young drew louder applause than the president.
Andy Young is the best.
Certainly no stranger to controversy.
Ambassador Young acted on his own.
I've been through many dangers, toils, and snares. If I had to take a few kicks and licks to get a Civil Rights Act, I'd do it any day of the week. That's what I call the dirty work.
So that's the film. It's going to air this Friday night at 9 p.m. here on MSNBC. I'll be here at 8 p.m. Eastern for a special Rachel Maddow show ahead of that on Friday. But we got lots to get to tonight. Stay with us. It was an almost unimaginable number. More than 5 million Americans turned out in small towns and big cities all across the country for those No Kings protests against the Trump administration back in June. That No Kings Day protest, that one day in June, is considered to be one of the 3 largest days of peaceful protest ever in U.S. history. There were so many demonstrations on No Kings Day in June that when we covered them here on this show the following day, we had to show them in batches of 20 to even scratch the surface of how many of them there were. Well, now the second No Kings Day is just around the corner. It's this Saturday, October 18th. And the organizing effort around it so far indicates that it might be even bigger this time around. In June, for those huge protests, they got like 2,100 different protests. This time for Saturday, organizers are expecting more than 2,500, even more than we saw in June. Joining us now is Ezra Levin. He's co-founder and co-executive director of Indivisible, the group that has helped lead the organizing for the No Kings rallies. Mr. Levin, it's nice to see you. Thanks for being here.
Great to see you, Rachel.
What are you expecting for Saturday?
I'm expecting it to be huge. I'm expecting it to be boisterous. I'm expecting it to be joyful. It's going to be the place to be, Rachel. I mean, it really is. I hope people are, we're doing big things here, right? We're collectively fighting for democracy. That's big, that's serious. Trump is saber rattling, and that can be scary. But fundamentally, what this is about is everybody coming together and demonstrating we don't do kings in America. And they're going to have funny signs. There's going to be chanting. There's going to be dancing. There's going to be singing. We want this to be a place where anybody can come out. And it doesn't matter your ideological persuasion. It doesn't matter who you voted for before. It doesn't matter if you've never protested before. This is a place for you if you believe we don't do kings in this country.
We're in this moment where Republican leaders, particularly House Speaker Mike Johnson, but also other Republicans, have tried to really fearmonger about the No Kings protest. He said it was a planned Hate America rally, which made me laugh out loud. But I have to ask, obviously they're trying to scare people into not protesting or trying to make it seem like a scary thing. On the other side, we've got protests in Portland erupting into dance parties and everybody with Cher on the boombox and dancing inflatable frogs and everything. How do you, what do you make of the Republican effort to really demonize protest against Trump?
Look, on the one hand, I welcome the free publicity. I'm glad they're talking about what will be the largest peaceful protest in modern American history coming up on Saturday. And it's also funny that they can't actually say no kings. They've got to make some other name up for it because they understand it. They say no kings. How is that objectionable?
Right.
How could anybody say that that's anything other than the most American thing since apple pie? But I do think we have to hold two things in our head at the same time. One, anybody who's been to a protest this year that's been organized by Indivisible or No Kings has seen moms and grandmas and kids and dogs and funny chants, and it was a feeling of joyous power out in the streets. And on the other hand, we've got an authoritarian regime who wants to crack down on free speech. So we should show up in force, and we should take care. We should attend the security training briefings. We should attend the how to de-escalate briefings and trainings. We should do that work so that if anything happens at these protests, we're ready to do it. But if your First Amendment rights are under attack and you decline to show up because of those threats, you don't have First Amendment rights. So if anybody is out there watching this and is like, well, I don't know, I've never been to a protest, or I'm hearing a lot of gnarly stuff from this regime, and maybe I won't come out. Let me tell you, it's going to be fun, it's going to be powerful, and it's going to be part of history.
What about the trainings that you have been doing? We talked about this last time I spoke with you. We talked about it, that in addition to organizing demonstrations, in addition to organizing political action where you're asking people to, contact their elected officials about something they're doing right or something they're doing wrong, you've also started doing this movement building work of training people in nonviolence, training people in communications tactics, training people to organize other people along those lines. How are those trainings going?
I mean, pretty incredible, Rachel. So coming out of the first No Kings protest, we had 2,169 events. There were 5 to 6 million people out. And what we funneled folks into was a training series on strategic non-cooperation. So that means not just focusing on your elected officials. That's good. Look, I like that. We call members of Congress. We show up at members of Congress's offices. I think that's good advocacy. But we have to recognize this regime is not just passing laws or issuing executive orders. It's threatening media institutions, universities, businesses, law firms, and we've got to wield our power to buck up those institutions that might otherwise fail. I think case in point is Disney and ABC News with Kimmel, him being bullied off the air, mass protests, mass opposition, and suddenly Disney finds some courage.
Yeah.
If you want courage to spread, you've got to spread that courage yourself. But that means focusing where you actually have leverage. So doing trainings coming out of these big protest events are a way to go from one day of protest to sustained opposition to the regime. And that's what we need.
Ezra Levin, co-founder and co-executive director of Indivisible. Not at all a scary person. Thank you for being here, Ezra. Good luck.
Thanks, Rachel.
Thank you. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Since President Trump announced he wanted to send troops into the streets of Chicago, the pushback there has been creative and multifaceted, and it keeps evolving. They're trying everything. Governor J.B. Pritzker told us last week here on this show about a letter he had just sent to the National Governors Association, saying the National Governors Association should stand with Illinois in opposing troop deployments in U.S. cities. Governor Pritzker didn't get a statement like that from the Governors Association, but he did get the chair of the group, the Republican governor of Oklahoma, to do a big interview with the New York Times saying, yes, he at least is against this. Governor Kevin Stitt of Oklahoma told the Times he opposes Trump's National Guard deployment in Chicago. He said Oklahomans would lose their minds if Pritzker in Illinois sent troops down to Oklahoma during the Biden administration. That same day, the Republican governor of Vermont also came out against the deployment of troops in Chicago. Vermont Governor Phil Scott called it unconstitutional. He said if Trump made good on his threats to jail Governor Pritzker, he, as the Republican governor of Vermont, would be, quote, on the forefront of pushing back against that. Meanwhile, the people of Chicago have continued to show up to make it clear they don't want troops deployed to Chicago, and they are opposed to what the Trump administration is doing in their city. Chicagoans have marched in big protests in downtown Chicago, including a couple of huge ones just in the last few days. They've also adopted the cheerfully absurd tactics that we've been seeing in Portland, Oregon, showing up in big inflatable cartoon costumes. We're seeing scrappy neighborhood responses in places like Albany Park, where neighbors sounded the alarm as federal agents made stops in that neighborhood until eventually the agents left. At a church in the Rogers Park neighborhood, we saw neighbors forming a human chain around the church to protect the church's parishioners as Trump's immigration agents lurked outside the church while Mass was ending. Outside a Chicago ICE facility yesterday, there was yet another prayer protest against what Trump's agents are doing in Chicago. Over 1,000 people joined a delegation of Catholic priests and nuns this weekend as they held a Eucharistic procession to that ICE facility. That's not just a protest, that's a Catholic religious rite. Those priests and nuns marched to that ICE facility with the Eucharist in the hopes of delivering Holy Communion to Catholic prisoners there. ICE refused to let them do it. Last week on the show, we played this video of a Presbyterian minister, the Reverend David Black, being pepper sprayed in the face and then shot in the head with a pepper ball as he prayed and called on ICE agents to repent. The bravery of Reverend David Black in that moment has had a lot of attention across the country in the last few days. That video, though, also became part of a new lawsuit against federal agents in Chicago. So far, the case involving Reverend Black has already resulted in a judge putting strict new limits on Trump's federal agents, using weapons like pepper balls and tear gas against protesters and journalists. Pushback of every kind, one way or another, always works. Reverend David Black joins us here next. Stay with us. By now you have seen this video of a pastor, Presbyterian pastor Reverend David Black, being shot in the head last month by Trump's immigration agents, shot with a pepper ball while he prayed outside an ICE facility in Chicago. Reverend Black joined a lawsuit last week to defend the First Amendment rights of protesters and journalists and Chicago residents. On Friday, the judge in that case ordered that federal agents in Chicago are now prohibited from, quote, using riot control weapons on members of the press, protesters, or religious practitioners who are not posing an immediate threat to the safety of a law enforcement officer or others. Joining us now is Reverend David Black. He's the pastor of the First Presbyterian Church of Chicago. Reverend, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Rachel.
A lot of people have had strong feelings seeing that video of you being hurt. I have to ask, how are you?
Thank you for asking. I'm recovering, but if I may say so, the story here is not about how I'm doing. The story here is if this is what the agents of the Trump administration are doing to pastors, to journalists, to peaceful protesters in broad daylight, it makes me shudder to imagine what they might be doing to our neighbors who are captive behind closed doors. And I hope that the consciences of all those who are concerned about me, and I have been grateful for the outpouring of support I have received from people around this country, but I hope that their consciences will be turned to those who are vulnerable and invisible in this moment, who are seeking that solidarity and support that has been so lovingly offered to me.
Your congregation is among the many faith organizations in Chicago that have responded both with leadership but also your membership in terms of turning out. What do you think the presence of faith leaders and faith communities in the protests has done to affect the overall presence of these federal agents and the overall response in Chicago?
This is a moment when people are profoundly disenchanted and profoundly overcome by despair and a feeling of powerlessness. But in our faith traditions, what we bear witness to, what I bear witness to every time that I read the Bible, is that humankind has been here before and that there is a way through. And I feel profoundly hopeful about how the ligaments of the body of Christ, of the people of this land, are coming together to protect one another, to support one another in solidarity and mutual love. And faith leaders showing up at these protests to minister. I came not as an organizer or even necessarily as a protester, but as a pastor. We're there to offer the witness of our faith, the Christian faith, Protestant faith, Catholic, Jewish, Muslim faiths, to offer a sense of hopefulness that justice is already in the waters and we will see a new creation and a new day.
The lawsuit that you joined has led to new restrictions in which a judge says, effectively, explicitly, what happened to you can no longer happen. Federal agents can no longer use weapons like pepper balls or other tactics like shoving people to the ground unless somebody poses a direct threat to them. Obviously, that was part of what that lawsuit was seeking. And so in that sense, in terms of the judge's order, it has been successful already. Do you think it will make a difference, either in terms of the practical, physical reality of what it is out there on those streets, but also potentially in the hearts of the people who are doing those things?
Well, ICE agents in a Chicago community deployed tear gas on civilians yesterday. So I think we are already seeing that this notoriously boundaryless administration is still having trouble with boundaries. But I am so grateful for all of the valor of the protesters, the lawyers, the teachers, the clergy who have showed up to make this legal ruling a reality, because it is a step in the right direction. And I hope that it will continue to summon the consciences of people throughout this land to seek more justice and more accountability.
The Reverend David Black, pastor of the First Presbyterian Church in Chicago. Sir, thank you for your time. I'm glad you're okay.
Thank you, Rachel.
We'll be right back. Stay with us. Quick reminder that I'll be back here this week, Friday night at 8 p.m. Eastern, for a special show ahead of my new documentary. The show's at 8 p.m. Eastern. Then the movie, Andrew Young, The Dirty Work, starts at 9 p.m. Eastern on Friday. I'm really proud of this thing. I hope you'll come back Friday night to watch with me. Really happy to have you here. You know, it is a weird time in the United States of America right now. And I know you know that, and I definitely know it too, but I feel like, you know, sometimes you just have to like stop and smell the weirdness. Just like note for a moment how utterly strange things are right now, particularly with the government. For example, the very weird pro-Trump far-right conspiracy theory world has long fantasized that Donald Trump has magic beds. Do you know about this? They think that Trump has magic beds, like a bed, like, you know, you make your bed, that kind of bed. And the theory is if you lie down in one of these magic beds, the magic bed will cure any disease that you have. It will fix everything that's wrong with you, to the point where even if you have lost a limb somehow, if you have had to have something amputated, if you lay down in one of Trump's magic beds, you will instantly regrow that limb that you lost. Magic medical beds. It is sort of shorthanded as the med bed right-wing conspiracy theory. Well, this weekend, the sitting president of the United States posted a video on his social media. He reposted a video somebody else had made that was an AI-generated fake video of him, the president, appearing on Fox News, announcing a new federal program in which everyone was finally going to get one of these med beds. All Americans would get med bed cards so we could all go to med bed hospitals, so we could lay down on one of these magic beds, be instantly cured of all of our diseases, grow back any of our missing limbs, and probably live forever. Because, as the conspiracy theory has it, liberals don't want people to have access to the magic beds, but Trump does. And so Trump, as president, is now letting everyone use the magic beds. He posted that video on his social media this weekend. I mean, this is one of the weirder conspiracy theories on the pro-Trump right. This is like right there along with the lizard people thing and the earth is flat and people who think there are big secret cities underwater or huge secret underground nuclear bunkers just for liberals. That one has actually been promoted by Trump's director of national intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard. I mean, you've heard about some of these crazy things, right? You've heard that the QAnon people think that JFK Jr. is still secretly alive and among us. Well, apparently they think that JFK Jr. is still secretly alive and among us because he's been put in one of the magic beds. It is just banana land, right? It is utterly insane. But the president of the United States this weekend posted a fake video of himself confirming that it's all true and announcing that everyone's getting a magic bed, before he then later deleted the post that he made without comment. Because this is our life now, and that's the leader of the free world, right? This comes at a time when the Fox and Friends weekend co-host, who Trump put in charge of the military, has summoned every single top general and admiral in the United States military to all come in person to the same meeting, all in the same room together tomorrow. Generals and admirals in every conflict zone all over the world where we have a military presence, the top officers that we have in the Pacific, in the Middle East, in Europe, everywhere, they have all been ordered to physically leave wherever it is they're posted to travel to the United States because they're all going to be put into the same room at the same time for one big meeting, and they have let it be known publicly and in advance exactly where that meeting is going to be and exactly when. And now the president says that he too will go to that meeting. So that's tomorrow. What could possibly go wrong? Who's the designated survivor for the U.S. military in this genius operation to put everyone who's in charge of everything all in the same room, all in person, all at the same time? Maybe it's the investment advisor and art collector who Trump named Secretary of the Navy. Sure, why not? Maybe it's the commandant of the Coast Guard. Oh, no, wait, there isn't one. New York Magazine is reporting that apparently the Homeland Security Secretary is so enjoying living rent-free in the Coast Guard commandant's house. So now we don't have anybody in charge of the Coast Guard, but Kristi Noem has the commandant's awesome house to live in for free. So nobody's really running the Coast Guard because she needs the house. In recent days, the president has ordered up a multiple count felony indictment of the former FBI director, James Comey. He has threatened Microsoft that they must fire Lisa Monaco because she's a former Biden administration official who now works for Microsoft. Trump's DOJ has fired a U.S. attorney in California, apparently specifically because she told a Trump immigration official that he would need to follow a federal court order. They've raided the home and office of Trump's former national security advisor. They have threatened RICO, organized crime, felony prosecutions against people who yelled at President Trump inside a restaurant in Washington, D.C. They appear to have opened a federal criminal investigation into Georgia prosecutor Fani Willis, who led the prosecution in Georgia against people who tried to force the overthrow of the presidential election results in 2020 in that state. So all of this is deeply weird, right? All of this is well, it is what it appears to be. But, you know, before all of those indictments and federal investigations and federal investigation threats, you may recall that they first had the mayor of Newark, New Jersey, handcuffed and arrested back in May. Remember this? The mayor of Newark, New Jersey, his name is Ross Baraka, and 3 Democratic members of Congress, they went to a federal immigration facility in Newark in May. They went there because the city of Newark said that facility was operating illegally, given the municipal ordinances that govern a facility like that. Well, thanks to body cam footage released by a federal court just this afternoon, we now know that the mayor of Newark was right when he said that that arrest did not arise organically from anything that happened on the ground at that ICE facility. He said at the time that his arrest appeared to have been ordered specifically by top Trump officials in Washington. Well, now today we can see with our own eyes that that appears to be true. I'm going to show you some of this footage right now. I do not think this has been shown anywhere else in the media. It was just released by a federal court today. And as you watch this, I want to point out three things. There's three sort of key people to watch for in this footage I'm about to show you. First, you will see this bald guy here. He's the one who's going to make the arrest of the mayor of Newark. Why is he going to make the arrest? Well, you will see him on the phone. That's a phone he's holding up to his face there. You'll see him on the phone agreeing that he will not only arrest the mayor, but he will definitely put him in handcuffs. And he tells the other officers there that he's doing so, quote, per the Deputy Attorney General of the United States. So this is an HSI, Homeland Security Investigations officer, on the phone agreeing that he's going to arrest this big city mayor, even though the mayor has already left the premises. And he's agreeing specifically and repeatedly, yes, yes, I will put him in handcuffs. Because it appears that's what he's being told to do from Washington. So that's one character to keep an eye on here. You'll also, very briefly in this clip, see this HSI officer who's in the foreground here, left side of your screen. And the reason I'm pointing him out is because before the arrest happens, he appears to recognize that this is all a bad idea. And he says so out loud. He says, quote, this is gonna get ugly. And then he walks away before the arrest happens. You will also see in the bright red jacket here, Congresswoman LaMonica McIver. She's a Democratic congresswoman from New Jersey. Trump is also having her prosecuted criminally for what happened here. Charges were ultimately dropped against Mayor Ras Baraka, but the Trump administration is still trying to prosecute this congresswoman. And in this footage, we will see a lot of what went down involving her. Again, this footage has just been released by a federal court in the case involving the congresswoman. It has not been shown elsewhere on TV at this length, but I want you to see it. Watch.
No, I got it. We're taking them right now. All right. Well, let me talk.
This is bullshit. We've been waiting an hour now. This is
Okay. Yeah, no, I'm going to take them right now.
You think about this today?
Okay. That's good. Okay. Come on.
You're kidding.
Okay, even though we stepped out, I'm going to put them in cuffs.
We're for over an hour. And we have the right to be in
All right,
there.
I'm cuffing them right now. All right. Guys, listen to me. We're going to walk out of the gates. I'm going to place the mayor in handcuffs, okay? We are arresting the mayor right now. Per the Deputy Attorney General of the United States. Anyone that gets in their way, I need you guys to give me a perimeter so I can cuff them and get them on there. If you have body cams, turn them on, okay?
Be advised, his security clearly is on and went for his weapon while we were engaging. So please, let's just be
We'll
careful.
walk him back in here. Okay? I already told him on camera that he was under arrest. We're going to place him under arrest. Come on. All right, guys, stay with me. Be careful.
Yeah, that's the one. I'll bring it.
Backing you up. You know?
Stay close, stay close. Get close, get close.
Where's my congressman?
Excuse me, what's up, man?
Get off the bus. Get off the bus. Get your hands off the bus. It's time. Don't put your hands on her either. Don't do it. Mr. Mayor, you're under arrest. I got you. Mr. Mayor, you're causing an issue. You're under arrest. I'm gonna go.
Rocco, can you do this?
Back up! Back up! Back up! Back up! Back up! Or I'll shoot! Stay down. Don't push it. Don't push it. Don't push it. Get back, guys. Get back. Inside. Inside. Inside.
Back up or I'll shoot, you hear the officer say there before he drops the receptacle for his paintballs or pepper balls or whatever they are in his gun. It's body cam footage from the Trump administration's arrest and apparently deliberate, ordered from Washington handcuffing of the Democratic mayor of the largest city in New Jersey. Charges against him were later dropped. They had initially claimed that they had to arrest him because he was somehow storming the facility. You see clearly in this footage that he's already left the facility. He's outside the gate. They leave the facility themselves to go get him while he is nowhere near inside the facility and not inside the facility's gates. Charges dropped against that mayor. Charges have not yet been dropped against Democratic Congresswoman LaMonica McIver. I want to show you one more clip of this body cam footage that was just released today. This is body cam footage from a different officer. Shows more of how they basically manhandled this congresswoman and other members of Congress before they filed charges against Congresswoman McIver. If you're wondering whether or not these federal immigration agents had any idea of what they were doing in this situation, whether they might have had any training for this type of thing at all, whether they might possibly have just been winging it with no idea of how to do it, I think this other body cam footage gives a pretty clear view of that. And again, remember, Congresswoman McIver is the person in the bright red jacket. Watch.
Step for the mayor! Don't cause this problem. Don't cause this problem.
Don't touch me. Don't touch me. Don't touch me. Don't touch me, brother. Just calm down. Don't touch me. Don't touch me. Don't touch me, brother. Lock up. Hurry, lock up.
Don't touch us. Don't touch us.
Lock up. Lock up. Can you do this?
Give me my congressman. Get off of her.
Lock
Chaos. Total chaos. This is the chaos they created, again, outside of this facility beyond the closed gates, which they opened to walk outside the facility to create that chaos. These officers appear to have no idea what they are doing. They've been told, apparently, from Washington to make sure they put handcuffs on the mayor of the largest city of New Jersey, and they approach that task the way a group of 6-year-olds on an uncoached soccer team might approach kickoff. Just run in there and scream and push and see what happens, including manhandling multiple members of Congress. Again, that's body cam footage obtained today as part of the federal criminal case that the Trump administration is still pursuing against a Democratic member of Congress, LaMonica McIver, for this incident in Newark, New Jersey in May. In New York City, the Trump immigration agent who last week was filmed doing this to a crying mother in front of her kids and in front of a hallway full of reporters and witnesses. This Trump agent initially was taken off the job. There was a statement from the Department of Homeland Security about his supposedly unacceptable behavior in throwing this woman to the ground the way that he did. But today he was reportedly back on the job in New York City. In Hyattsville, Maryland, a few days ago, another of Trump's immigration agents fumbled his gun, dropped it, dove for it, dropped it again, momentarily lost track of it, and then grabbed it and pointed it at passersby. Apparently more out of embarrassment than anything else, he then seems to have quite belatedly realized that maybe he should not just be aiming this gun at people's heads, and then after a few moments, he eventually drops it and starts pointing it down on the ground instead. You okay, big guy? You ever done this before? This weekend in Chicago, these Trump immigration officers decided that they did not like a guy on a bike who appears to have said something derogatory about President Trump. And so then they all set off like a kindergarten soccer team, chasing and chasing and chasing to try to get him while he rode away on his bike. Benny Hill music is optional there, but there they all go. Sure. What's the national security objective here, guys? There were protests all over the Chicago area this weekend against Trump's immigration arrests in Chicago and the weird show of force that Trump's agents keep making, with federal agents in masks walking in formation around downtown Chicago and riding on boats in the Chicago River, brandishing long guns like they're swift boating up the Mekong Delta or something. Today, as Trump announced that he would send troops into Chicago, supposedly to defend immigration facilities there, Democratic Governor J.B. Pritzker called on Chicago and Illinois residents to get out there and document everything these guys are doing.
People of Illinois, we need your help. Get out your cell phones, record and narrate what you see. Put it on social media. Peacefully ask for badge numbers and identification. Speak up for your neighbors. We need to let the world know that this is happening and that we won't stand for it.
Democratic Governor of Illinois, J.B. Pritzker, speaking today as Trump sends some number of troops to that city. Let me show you one other thing that Governor Pritzker said today.
Donald Trump and Kristi Noem and Tom Homan said they were targeting the worst of the worst criminals. They lied, and they continue to lie. 60% of the individuals that ICE has taken in Illinois this year have no criminal convictions of any kind. ICE is running around the loop, harassing people for not being white. Just a year ago, that was illegal in the United States. Now, ICE is making it commonplace. That's not making America great. In any other country, if federal agents fired upon journalists and protesters when unprovoked, what would we call it? If federal agents marched down busy streets, harassing civilians and demanding their papers, what would we say? I don't think we'd have any trouble calling it what it is: authoritarianism. So let's not pretend it's something else when it happens in our American cities.
When he talks about federal agents firing upon journalists, he's talking, among other things, about a correspondent for the local CBS station in Chicago having a pepper ball shot at her in her car as she drove past an ICE facility within the past few days. In addition to the protests and pushback that we are seeing in Illinois, we are also seeing protests and pushback in Memphis, Tennessee, where people marched and rallied this weekend against Trump's plans to send troops to Memphis as of today as well. There were also protests in Knoxville and in Nashville, Tennessee, in support of Memphis as well. This weekend, there were really big protests in Portland, Oregon, including a large march that was attended by the state of Oregon's governor and Portland's mayor. As Trump plans to send troops to Portland as well. We're going to be speaking live with Oregon Governor Tina Kotek here tonight. Governor Kotek said she spoke directly to Trump about his plan to send troops to Oregon. She says he seemed confused that Portland isn't on fire, that Portland isn't in trouble of any kind. She described him as perhaps seeming confused, that he had been looking at out-of-context, out-of-date social media posts about protests in Oregon from years ago, and literally he might not have any idea that there's no state of war or state of chaos in Portland right now at all. Oregon was in court trying to block Trump deploying troops there within hours of him announcing the deployment this weekend. That lawsuit is already moving through the courts. We're waiting to see if a federal judge will block that deployment imminently. We're going to speak again with Governor Kotek of Oregon live here in just a moment. In Kansas and Lawrence, Kansas, people protested against Trump this weekend and specifically in support of Oregon, as Oregon tries to fend off Trump sending in the troops there. In Kern County, California this weekend, rural California, people marched from Bakersfield City Hall to the ICE facility at Mesa Verde, protesting Trump's immigration arrests and the conditions in which people are being held there. In Des Moines, Iowa, literally thousands of people turned out late last week in a big, spontaneous, angry protest when Trump's immigration agents arrested the beloved superintendent of Des Moines Public Schools. He's currently being imprisoned in a jail in Sioux City, Iowa, and this weekend people protested in support of him there as well. Last week, you may have seen that some anonymous and very talented artists tried to put up this huge 12-foot tall statue on the National Mall. It's called Best Friends Forever, and it shows President Trump holding hands with his longtime close friend, convicted sex trafficker and pedophile Jeffrey Epstein. The artist who made this did get a permit to put this up on the National Mall, and it went up last week before federal officials apparently angrily pulled it down despite the permit, claiming there was something about the statue that was incongruent with the lawful permit the artists got to put it up. The federal officials who toppled the statue were apparently quite rough with it. They damaged it a lot. They appear to have, for example, broken off most of Trump's head when they took the thing down. But the group retrieved it from federal custody, and they worked very hard and very fast on Thursday to repair it because they got another permit on Thursday to allow them to put it back up. That said, when they showed up with the repaired statue to put it back up, as the permit said they could, they say a phalanx of about 10 cars, including some unmarked vehicles, were waiting for them on the National Mall so that the statue wouldn't ever go up. They would grab it again and take away the newly repaired Trump Epstein statue as soon as the group showed up with it to put it up again, despite the permit that said they could. The group is undaunted, though. They have now, as they say in their words, quote, released the files. They have released the 3D printing files for anybody who has a 3D printer who might want to recreate this statue themselves. Free download. Pushback drives them crazy. It drives them crazy. They do not want to do anything that's hard. They like doing things that cow their opponents and that are easy to get away with. They do not want pushback. They do not like pushback. They do not know how to handle it when they get it. Ahead of what is expected to be another very large round of No Kings protests against Trump on Saturday, October 18th, all across the country. We're going to talk tonight more about the character of the pushback against Trump and what he's doing. We're going to check in with a Democratic candidate for governor who has been targeted by the Trump administration in a truly unsettling way. We're going to speak live with the governor of Oregon, who at this moment is trying to block Trump from sending troops to her state. They were in court on that matter tonight. She also has the burden of trying gently to inform him that what he's seeing on social media might not all be true. Talk to her about that awkwardness. Maybe a quick lie down in a med bed might help ease his anxious mind about these things. We are in weird times. We got lots to get to tonight. Stay with us. New Jersey is one of two states that have governor's races this year. It's New Jersey and Virginia. So anything happening in those races is pretty much automatically going to be a national news story. But in the New Jersey race, something has just happened that's a legit bombshell. And it involves not just goings on in New Jersey, it involves the Trump administration. Unavoidably, the federal government has access to lots of information about you, lots of data that you trust the government to handle responsibly and legally, because it's sensitive data about you that could be used for all sorts of nefarious purposes if it was released publicly or got into the wrong hands. Well, As you know, the Trump administration hasn't exactly been keeping faith with those responsibilities. They have used federal mortgage data to try to go after Democratic Senator Adam Schiff and New York Democratic Attorney General Letitia James and Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook. That's the Trump administration using mortgage data from the Federal Housing and Finance Agency to target people President Trump wants targeted. The Trump administration has also started using data from the IRS and data from the Social Security Administration, specifically to target immigrants. The Trump administration has started demanding records from the states of everybody who's registered to vote in those states. They have said outright that they're going to use that data to bring criminal investigations against people whose information is in that data, as states now start to resist handing it over. Well, along those lines, we now have this new story that relates to the New Jersey governor's race. The Trump administration has apparently released the full military personnel record, the full Social Security number and everything of the Democratic candidate for governor in New Jersey. They've released it to an ally of her Republican opponent. The Democratic candidate for governor in New Jersey is Congresswoman Mikey Sherrill. She spent nearly a decade as a Navy helicopter pilot. Her campaign recently was horrified to realize that the Trump administration had released her private, unredacted, full military records to an ally of her Republican opponent's campaign. A donor to that campaign, somebody who Republican candidate Jack Ciattarelli says he's considering as his lieutenant governor. CBS News was first to report that the National Personnel Records Center, which is charged with maintaining personnel records for service members and civil servants of the U.S. government, released Sherrill's full military file almost completely unredacted. The documents included Sherrill's full Social Security number, which appears on almost every page, home addresses for her and for her parents, life insurance information, Sherrill's performance evaluations. The federal government released Mikey Sherrill's unredacted file to an ally of the Jack Ciattarelli campaign, who had filed apparently a Freedom of Information request. Such records are not supposed to be made available in full to the public unless it's been more than 60 years since someone completed their military service, which makes this release potentially a violation of privacy laws. She's out today with a new TV ad, claims that the law was broken in this case. The National Personnel Records Center says that they screwed up. They admit that they made a serious error here. They got a FOIA request for publicly releasable information about Sherrill's military record. And they say a technician mistakenly sent the full unredacted file. And maybe that is what happened. But, you know, the Trump administration does not have a super strong claim for the benefit of the doubt on stuff like this. Again, the federal agency that gave out the records admits that this was wrong. They've apologized to Congresswoman Mikey Sherrill. They have asked the guy they gave the records to not disseminate them. The Ciattarelli campaign did not respond to our requests for comment, but a lawyer for the campaign has said they didn't realize the file contained information that shouldn't have been released. The lawyer says once they learned that, they ceased disseminating the material. But with 5 weeks to go till Election Day, this is the kind of thing that can not only shake up a race, it can bring national attention to this race for all the wrong reasons. Joining us now is Congresswoman Mikey Sherrill. She's the Democratic nominee for governor in the great state of New Jersey. Congresswoman Sherrill, thank you very much for being here. I appreciate it.
Well, Rachel, thank you so much for having me.
Let me ask if I got any of that the wrong way around in how I described it. I know the National Personnel Records Center and the Ciattarelli campaign seem to be saying this was all just a regrettable mistake. I have to ask if there's elements of this that I either didn't just explain or that are different in terms of how you see it.
Sure. So what happened was the Trump administration illegally released my unredacted military personnel records to an ally of the Ciattarelli campaign, who then shopped it around to press, even despite being, in his own words, shocked and disgusted when he saw that it contained things like my Social Security number, my parents' addresses, my 80-year-old parents' addresses. So this was not unknown that this was information that should not have been in the public. And if there was any question when they shopped it to the press, the journalist who got it told them this should not be out here. In fact, he wrote a whole article about it and warned them that this was not information. And yet they continued to push this information out and have not given it back, have not ceased using it. So it really, what they're putting out is just not true. And then furthermore, When we look at how this happened, when we worked with the journalist who was presented with this information and went back to the archivist to see how this happened, there's no mistake that was made here. This was intentional. And I'll tell you, if you speak to the professional archivists that were there, remember Trump fired them, and now Marco Rubio is in charge of the archives, not a professional archivist. You'll hear that it takes months, if not over a year, to get access because they're so behind. And yet what happened here was there was a request for my data a day before my primary, and the gentleman from the ally of the Ciattarelli campaign was told, no, you can't have this. You need to meet certain wickets to get it. And then 2 days after the primary that I won, he found, and I quote, a real helpful person at the archives office to get that information to them. Now, here's what should have happened. The archives should have requested a signature of mine. They didn't have it. They should have had my social security number. The way they got that was that a technician in the archives went into the VA database, which they had access to as a federal agency. We would not have access to that, to get my social security number, to then pull my files, which they then gave to this ally of the Ciattarelli campaign. Then they should have told the Navy that they had done so. They never did that. And so there's really no doubt in my mind that this was fully intentional from the Trump administration to the Ciattarelli campaign to attempt to do this. And they've continued now to go after my family, my husband's service, my kids, in a completely inappropriate way. So I just have to say to the New Jersey people, if he's doing this to me, a sitting member of Congress and a veteran, imagine what he'll do with your information.
Do you feel like you're running against Jack Ciattarelli, the Republican candidate, but also running against the federal government? I mean, the federal government has this, and the U.S. military has this information because we don't have a choice about whether or not they have it. We have to trust that they will safeguard it in a way that's both responsible and legal. It seems to me like you're up against something that is more than your average political dirty trick.
Yeah, this is pretty low. And that's why I really just have to say thank you to the veterans from across this country, from Korea to Vietnam to the global war on terror, veterans from across this country who have reached out in solidarity with me, because this is beyond the pale. Because as veterans, many of us have incredibly high security clearances. I myself had the highest security clearance in the military. And the amount of information our nation has when they do that, they interview your friends and your neighbors, and they go through your medical records and those of your family and friends. It just, to think that you have this, that the government has this information and could use it against you, it is just completely unacceptable to veterans. And so I have to tell people out there, thank you so much for your support. And I'm just committing to people in New Jersey, to veterans across this country. I'm running for governor because I can take this. Jack Ciattarelli can come after me. Donald Trump can come after me. But I am going to be governor so you don't have to put up with this. So when Trump comes after New Jerseyans and their private data, their social security numbers, their driver's license, I was just talking to Governor Josh Shapiro earlier today. He has told Trump no. And I will tell Trump no when he comes after people in my state so they don't have to go through this.
Congresswoman Mikey Sherrill, Democratic nominee for New Jersey governor. Thank you very much for helping us cover this scandal this evening. Thanks for helping us understand it.
Thank you.
All right, more news ahead tonight. Stay with us. Today, President Trump ordered National Guard troops to Chicago, supposedly to protect federal immigration facilities. Yesterday, he ordered troops into Portland, Oregon, which he described as war-ravaged, despite the fact that it's still just Portland, Oregon, which is really nice. This is what the streets of Portland, Oregon looked like yesterday. People showing up to peacefully protest the planned military occupation of their city. If this is what Trump thinks war-ravaged looks like, he has a strange understanding of that term. The two people you see here at the front of some of the protests this weekend are Portland Mayor Keith Wilson. Hold on, we got those images? Portland Mayor, hello? Portland, hello? No, we got that. There we go. Thank you. Portland Mayor Keith Wilson on the right there, and Oregon Governor Tina Kotek. Those elected officials, both Democrats, showed up to protest the Trump planned troop deployment just hours after it was announced. After that rally, Governor Kotek posted online, quote, "Today, I was in downtown Portland walking peacefully with Oregonians to say that we don't need military intervention here. We're peaceful. We're united. We are Oregon." And indeed, almost immediately after Trump issued the deployment order for the city of Portland, the state sued the Trump administration to block the deployment of those troops. They were there in court within 6 hours of the deployment order. And now tonight, the judge in that case has scheduled the first hearings on that case for later this week. The fight here is joined. The governor joins us live here next. Stay with us.
In my conversations directly with President Trump and Secretary Noem, I have been abundantly clear with them that Portland and the state of Oregon believe in the rule of law, and we can manage our own local public safety needs.
That was Oregon Governor Tina Kotek this weekend saying she told the Trump administration that her state doesn't need or want American troops deployed in the city of Portland. The Trump administration has gone ahead and ordered those troops deployed anyway, and now the city of Portland and the state of Oregon are pushing back both in court in a lawsuit they filed essentially instantly as soon as the deployment order was made, and also in peaceful protests, including at least one major protest this weekend that the governor herself helped lead. Joining us now is Oregon's Democratic Governor Tina Kotek. Governor, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I know there's a lot going on, and I really appreciate your time.
Thanks, Rachel. Good to be here.
What do you want the country to understand about the order from the president to deploy troops in your state? What do you understand about what they're going to be doing and what the scope of this sort of impingement on your authority is going to be?
Yeah, well, thank you. First of all, I want people to know that Portland, Oregon is a beautiful, vibrant, successful city. We are not a war zone. I was out there all weekend long. People were out and about, shopping, going to restaurants, going to soccer matches, going to shows. Portland is a beautiful place, and we are not under siege. There's no insurrection here. When the president makes a choice to say, I should have military troops in my state, I push back right away. We were not apprised of the reason for this. When I tried to get that from the president, it was about concerns about safety at a federal facility. And I said, look, law enforcement is on top of it. There's peaceful protests. And if people are getting out of line, they are being held accountable. I continue to not understand what the mission is here, but we don't need military intervention in Portland. And it's just unconscionable. It's nonsensical, has nothing to do with what's actually on the ground here.
I know that you spoke directly with President Trump around the time that he was making this decision, and there's been some reporting about that conversation that suggests that the president might have been basing his decision, or at least basing like his stated grounds for the decision, on some inaccurate or outdated information that he has seen on social media, maybe without understanding that it wasn't current information. Can you help us understand that at all?
Well, that is my concern. You know, that's a challenge, I think, with footage that it becomes evergreen and then you don't know when it was taken. Because when I was speaking with him, he was talking about multiple federal facilities. And I was like, you know, the plywood is down. Downtown Portland is on the mend. We don't have the situation we had 5 years ago. I don't know what he is remembering, but what I do know is that local law enforcement can manage the situation that's related to the peaceful protests that are happening at the federal facility. And I think one of the things I'm so frustrated about is he is calling up the Oregon National Guard over top of my role as commander-in-chief of those troops here in Oregon. The Oregon National Guard, these are private citizens, citizen soldiers, right? They volunteer for this role. They have to come off their jobs, go away from their families to do something that is unclear, undefined, with no strategy of what they're actually trying to solve. It's a waste of taxpayer dollars. And most Oregonians know this makes absolutely no sense.
I know that as part of this lawsuit that the state has filed to try to block this deployment, both Portland Police and Oregon State Police have issued statements declarations saying they don't need or want federal troops in Portland to deal with protesters, not only from your perspective as the state's governor, but from their perspective as to the relevant law enforcement here. They're saying that federal troops would not help and they don't need it. I'm wondering how that kind of reaction from law enforcement, kind of support for your side of this argument from law enforcement may bolster this case. It seems to me like a really important factor here.
Well, as a responsible governor, I go and ask law enforcement, do you need additional help? Is there something you can't manage? And what I'm hearing is no. We've not had an ask of the Oregon State Police at this point to help even the Portland Police manage the ongoing sporadic demonstrations that are of concern to the federal administration. And when I spoke to Homeland Security Nome and as well as the president, I said, I don't understand what is the concern that we can't manage here. And I think it's really important to point out that the groundswell of support, or at least the opposition to the deployment, business leaders, we had business leaders at our press conference saying, look, this is not what downtown Portland needs. We're on the rise. You're sending the wrong message. We have mayors across the greater Portland area saying, we stand with Portland. There's not an issue here. And if there is mutual aid opportunities if that's the case. So I'm perplexed. I'm frustrated. I don't understand this. And we're fighting in the courts, right? The attorney general and I are lockstep. He went to court the day we got the order. I was hoping we'd get some more time to actually talk this through, but the president just came out on a Sunday morning and said, our troops, you're going to take your troops and they're coming to town. That is not how we should do this. This is not what our country should look like. And when I was on the protest in the demonstration line yesterday, walking with the mayor, we value our ability as Americans, as Oregonians, to express our concern about this administration. And people are going to continue to do that lawfully. We can keep people safe and have lawful demonstrations. And that's what we want to do here. And we do not need the help of the federal administration.
Oregon's Democratic Governor, Tina Kotek. Governor, thank you so much for your time this evening. I know it's a stressful time right now to have the job that you have, but I really appreciate you helping us understand it. Thank you.
Thanks, Rachel. Have a good one.
You too. We'll be right back. All right, that's going to do it for me tonight. Really happy to have you here. So it is a statue called Best Friends Forever. It's about 12 feet tall. We talked about this on last week's show. You might remember. This is a statue in Washington that was created by anonymous artists. It shows Donald Trump and his longtime friend, the convicted pedophile and sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein, holding hands and gazing lovingly at each other while they kick up their heels, seemingly delighting in their long-standing friendship. We reported last week here on the show that this statue had a permit to be put up on the National Mall in Washington, D.C., but despite that, Park Service personnel were sent out by someone to topple it over and take it down. And the officials who toppled it over and took it down, they pretty severely damaged it. They smashed in the Trump head part of it. They tore the hands apart so the Trump and Epstein figures wouldn't be holding hands anymore. We reported last week at this time that the group that created the statue was able to retrieve the broken statue and repair it. And then they brought it back out again to put it up again with a permit to be there up on the National Mall. When they went back to put it back up, they were met with a big show of federal force, not just Park Service personnel, but also people in unmarked cars there to take it down as soon as they put it back up. But these artists are nothing if not persistent, because they did put it back up again for a third time. Best Friends Forever, this time with even better repairs. The plaque on the statue says, in honor of Friendship Month, and it has the big heart hands symbol. It says, we celebrate the long-lasting bond between President Donald J. Trump and his closest friend, Jeffrey Epstein. So the Trump administration took this thing down twice. But the artists who made it got it back up for the weekend, right there on the National Mall. When President Trump went to Norfolk, Virginia this weekend to treat an audience of U.S. Navy sailors like they were paid attendees at one of his political rallies, this actually was one of the protests he had to pass by on the way to get there. People on this overpass on the way into Norfolk with a big sign that says, "End the GOP shutdown," in the center of your screen there, but look there on the right. Off to the right of that, a silhouette of the Trump and Jeffrey Epstein holding hands, kicking up their heels statue. God, that's got to drive him nuts, right? Or maybe not. Maybe not. Today in the Oval Office, the president was asked a question by CNN's Caitlin Collins. It was a question about Ghislaine Maxwell, Jeffrey Epstein's, for lack of a better term, partner in crime, the woman convicted of child sex trafficking with Jeffrey Epstein, who herself participated in molesting kids with him. Trump was asked about the Supreme Court decision today to uphold her federal conviction, to leave her in federal prison. President Trump responded to that question by saying that he planned to talk to DOJ about whether or not to give Ghislaine Maxwell a pardon. Seriously, reporter, why would she be a candidate for clemency, sir? President Trump, I don't know. I'd have to speak to the DOJ. I mean, I'll look at it. I have a lot of people who have asked me for pardons. I'll call him Puff Daddy. He has asked me for a pardon. Reporter, but she was convicted of child sex trafficking. Trump, yeah, I mean, I'm going to have to take a look at it. I'd have to ask DOJ. Yeah, I know the child sex trafficking thing, but this is a woman convicted of organizing the Jeffrey Epstein child sex trafficking ring and of participating in the sexual abuse of children with Jeffrey Epstein. Again, the president's longtime friend. This president has reportedly been told by his attorney general that his name is in the Epstein files multiple times. He is refusing to release those files. His administration has already intervened in Ghislaine Maxwell's federal sentence to arrange to have her moved to a low-security, more comfortable federal prison where typically sex offenders aren't even allowed. But now on top of that, today, he is volunteering to reporters in the Oval Office that he thinks, maybe she should be getting a pardon. He's going to talk to the DOJ about it. Reporter, but she was convicted of child sex trafficking. Trump, yeah,